What's up, guys? Today, of course, you're going to be hearing my thoughts on premium. And before I get into it, I have just a few little housekeeping notes here. With regard to what premium is, you'll be getting 4 packs, 16 maps included, new game modes in quotations, new elite classes, 20 plus weapons, and perhaps some gadgets and equipment for about 50 bucks, which was pushing like 65, 70 in Canada here, so that's a bit of an issue. The first expansion is set to due out in March 2017, which is a key point that I'll be talking about as we go. Remember that. You'll also get 14 battle packs as part of your purchase. Now, premium tends to be something that really divides this community up from what I've seen regularly. A lot of the fanboys and the people that really are huge Battlefield fanatics, they're going to buy it even if they admit deep down that they probably don't like the game as much as they thought, just because, well, they're a fanboy, they love the game. Me, on the other hand, I'm more of an objective type individual, and I don't mean that like playing the objective. I go into something completely open-minded, but I will absolutely critique something if I think that there's something wrong with it, or I think that there's something that needs to be addressed to say balance it out or give you the most bang for your buck. I'm a rabid consumer and individual rights guy, so that's my issue. So to lead directly into that, my gripes with premium are, it's 3 or 4 of them. First one I have is that of course it splits the community in terms of maps right off the get-go. Some people some servers immediately will switch to a 24/7 DLC loadout for a while exclusively, or as part of like mixing in the base games, what they'll do is include 1 or 2 of those maps in. The problem, of course, being that if you don't have premium or happen to buy that DLC, you'll get booted at the start of the next DLC map. So essentially it forces you to buy the DLC within the first month of it coming out, because your server options, as much as there will be options to play the base game only, your server options are going to plummet without that DLC. It's just how it is all the time. So that's one issue I have with it. It really does split the community up. The second one here is maps the DLC maps tend to be either extremely popular and have a good life cycle as the game carries on, or they're just immediately done. Like they last a month and they're done. Or you'll find that when the second and third wave of DLCs comes out, if the first DLC maps weren't very good, they either dramatically reduce in popularity or they're completely replaced, which again now adds to the multitude of ways that the player base is split even more. You might have some in only the base game, you might have some that only are in the previous DLC, and you might have some that are only in the new DLC. So it's like 3 different ways to split the community up. Now, the best case scenario, of course, for this is that for some maps you might get a 24/7 server for that one map, as opposed to all 4 in the DLC. But to me, it doesn't make a lot of logical sense. Now, it is subjective. If you bought say Battlefield 4's DLC that had North Shore Canals and you played that 24/7, that might have been worth 15 bucks to you, and that's great. That's no problem. To me, though, I'd want at least a 50% rate of 2 of those 4 maps being ones I play regularly for that DLC to be really worth the cost. But that's me. That's my gripe. Now, of course, there's an alternate route for this. DICE can, of course, use aesthetics to help pay for some of the maps to release them to the community for free, sort of the way Overwatch does. And what they can do, I guess, is use smaller microtransactions that don't impact game balance, say by selling vehicle or weapon skins for real-life money, and then they could use that to either release new free maps, or they can use it to improve server functionality, or perhaps more frequent balance and play testing balance patches. So that's the ideal. And if you don't believe me on this, and of course I don't think Battlefield 4 would be able to match this, but I'm sure there's a market for it. Grand Theft Auto 5 came out, I think, recently and said that they made $500 million on just cosmetics and other microtransactions that didn't really affect weapon balance after the fact. So as much as DICE might not make that money, I'm sure that there's a market for it. I'm sure there's the completionists out there will purchase more microtransactions as opposed to just battle packs, which are random, which sort of most people probably a lot of the time, well, actually no, I won't say that because I was going to say random doesn't usually work, but then CS:GO has the cases that are random, and you know. But I do believe there's a market for it through like non-game impacting microtransactions that could actually pay for some of these maps. Now, there's a couple of arguments I've heard for premium that I'd like to address as well. The first argument here I've heard is that $110 for a game with a playable life cycle of great fun for 3 years is perfectly reasonable. But to me, that's a rose-tinted glasses hindsight 2020 argument. It's completely based on past precedent games, and of course doesn't apply to all future games. The argument's completely dependent on subjective longevity, whether you like it or not, and objective longevity, whether you actually find servers and maps down the road to be actually able to play them. The fact is, you have no idea until you've had time to play the game whether you're going to enjoy it and whether or not it's actually good, so that others will continually be playing it down the road. So that, to me, is why you shouldn't buy premium right off the get-go. More on that in a second, though. Don't leave me. There's also another issue with premium, I find, and that's an issue with unbalanced weapons or a pay-to-win strategy. We saw this with the AWS a while after the China Rising DLC, where it was basically an assault rifle with a 200-round drum mag. It was insane. And then that ends up becoming a distinct advantage to those who buy the DLC and have the weapon, and those that don't buy the DLC. And that's, of course, accounting for average skill among those that have it and don't. The only caveat I would have with that I'd be pro bringing weapons into DLCs into video games through premium and weapon packs is if these weapons are tested and balanced in a CTE environment in a pre-DLC release. In that case, weapon balance shouldn't be an issue because bugs and other concerns will have been addressed. But because Battlefield 1 hasn't announced any sort of CTE as of yet that I'm aware of, that would be a concern for me. So if there's no CTE or testing for a weapon before release, then I don't think they should be released as part of DLCs. That's my view on it. And lastly, of course, second last, my issue with buying and pre-ordering games, and as much as I'm having tons of fun with this beta, is it just doesn't make a lot of logical sense. Like, would you buy a car before test driving it? Would you buy a house before having a property evaluation or visiting it via open house? I wouldn't. I'd want to know an awful lot. I'd research it. I'd want to know an awful lot about it. I'd want to try it out before I actually committed to it. And that's, I guess, what the beta is for the base game. But you have no idea what's going to be going on beyond that, especially not toward going all the way to March. So premium off the get-go is not a good idea in my opinion. Again, it's your money. If you make that money back, no problem. And of course, it's less of a financial risk for a video game versus a house and a car. It's your money. But I just think it hurts the consumers as a whole if people just blindly purchase something in the advance without actually being told what you're going to see. That's my view. And lastly, to sum up, as alluded to previously, you will be able to play this game until March to decide if you like it and if you feel it's going to have longevity to put that money down throughout the game. Not to mention you're going to have lots of balance and performance patches before March as well. The biggest plus of that for premium is the timing. You will have a chance for months to get to try the game out. So my advice, which of course you can completely ignore, but I think it's the logical way to do it, test the game out for a few months, see if you're actually going to enjoy it, see if you're still enjoying it, and then maybe consider buying premium. Wait for CTE, if there is announcements of a CTE news for weapon and map testing, see if there's balance concerns and issues with that, see if there's bug concerns. So I'd say give it a few months, and if you're sold on it, then go buy premium. Buying it blindly before the game is released or before being told what you're actually going to be getting with the games and going through the trials and tribulations of the game, it doesn't make sense to me. But that's me. Again, if you're a fanboy who's going to be buying it anyway, that's fine. You can let me know in the comments just to rub it in. But to me, that will never really make a ton of sense. I am always a person that has to try it out. I have to see the strengths and weaknesses, and then I balance it accordingly. So hopefully you do the same. Hopefully you wait a bit, you try it out, you see what the pros and cons are, and hopefully I had some impact on your purchasing habits. Have a good one, YouTube.